Hi, I'm Stephen Feinberg, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Film and Television Office. Our guest tonight is Michael Maino. He's the announcer, host of Conducting Conversations on WCRI 95.9 FM. He's a singer, musician, a man about town. Mike? Dancer, organizer, producer.
Worldwide hero.
Yeah, worldwide hero. Welcome to Double Feature.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to be changing sides of the table with you.
Right, you're always asking the questions. I think, how many, you have like, what, 5 shows on the radio?
Yeah, we produce a lot of shows at WCRI, and I have a chance to meet a lot of great people. Yeah. And I've had you on my show many times.
And we've had laughs. We've had a lot of laughs.
Have a lot of fun.
And so it's nice to be able to switch things over. Now I'm asking you the questions, my friend.
See, I always tell people that I'm interviewing, my job is very difficult because I have to play dumb. And all I do is ask questions and wait for the other person to respond. Now you're in that position.
Well, it feels good to feel dumb. I'm loving it. Well, Mike, so you were born and raised in Rhode Island.
I was raised in Rhode Island. My whole life, lived here, loved it.
Yep.
Love it still. Live on the east side, and it's just a great spot.
And you are a singer.
Correct.
Let's talk about your how did you get into music and singing and all of that stuff?
Well, it's an interesting story because a lot of people that find music some way, whether they're a pianist or whatever, there's some time they can look back on and say, I was 6 years old and my mother bought me a little piano or something like that. I don't have that memory because the night I was born, my father, who sang in a barbershop quartet, was doing a show the night I was born, and he was hosting another barbershop quartet from out of town and found out that I was born, so they rushed to the hospital, my dad, and those other 4 guys, and those other 4 guys were called the Buffalo Bills Quartet, which were the stars of Music Man on Broadway and in the movie.
Wow.
So I grew up in it. I don't have any first memory of it. I always had singing in my life. My mother was involved as a singer as well. And it just was one of those things where it was always there.
You were immersed. It was the family business.
Right. It was one of those things where I have an older brother who did not sing, much to my dad's disappointment. And I kind of came along and just started and was singing by the time I was 10 years old and going to chorus rehearsals with the Narragansett Bay Chorus, which is a long-time Providence institution, started in 1949, and still going strong.
Wow.
And so I was attending weekly rehearsals, and then that led to being in shows in high school and then in college, and just kept going from there.
Did your dad also have like your deep timbre voice that you have? Did you?
Very similar voice. It was interesting growing up and being in a quartet when I was very young. And there's a lot of competition in the world of barbershop quartets. You do a lot of shows, but then you also have these competitions. Right. And I can remember my first time competing was the year after my dad had finished competing. So we never
father and son never went loggerheads.
But we ended up being one of the top quartets in the world when I was very young, very fortunate. And he had worked his whole life to get to that point. And we ended up placing 1 spot higher than him in the international competition. So that was how we handled it.
Did he obviously, was he a mentor? He must have been a mentor for you.
Absolutely. Great guy, was very responsible for promoting singing, performed all over the world, did USO tours with his quartet, which was called the Neptuners. Yeah. They were originally out in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and they performed on shows and started groups all over the country. I still have people coming up to me today saying, I remember your dad.
Wow.
And so forth. And my mother kind of followed in his footsteps and started an organization called Harmony Incorporated in the late 1950s, and she produced and promoted barbershop singing through that. So there was a lot of it in my background.
Now, was the 50s the heyday of the barbershop quartet, or like where are we today with the barbershop quartet?
Well, it started in 1938.
Okay.
The Providence chapter was 1949, as I said, the Narragansett Bay Chorus, and it did grow to its major popularity probably in the 60s, where as an international organization between the United States and Canada, there was about 35,000 men singing.
Wow.
And pretty much every major city had a chorus or a chapter. It has declined somewhat since then and hit a low a few years ago, but now is very much on the rebound. A lot of youth involvement now with the college a cappella scene coming up and the a cappella shows on television becoming popular. I was just in Jacksonville performing at a convention just last week, and there were thousands of people involved in the youth movement. It's great, you know.
Wonderful.
It's great.
So you think shows like America's Got Talent and the different
Perfect
The Voice
Pitch and all that stuff.
It hasn't had a positive impact on.
Absolutely, and I think groups like Straight No Chaser that that has become popular, and different groups like that come along. Rockapella was a big a cappella group and still is performing, and they were originally from Providence. They started at Brown University, so I think the youth can hear that and see that and enjoy that, and they want to do it too.
And then there's the Music Man. There's going to be a revitalization of that too.
Absolutely, that is a big part of my life, as I mentioned. And in the 50s, I went to several performances at the Broadway show in the late 1950s. Got to meet Robert Preston and Barbara Cook, the stars back then, and Buddy Hackett.
Sure.
It was a lot of fun. And Music Man was the first show I was ever in high school. And I've since done several professional performances. Did a national tour of Music Man for 6 months. And,
wow.
And just recently, 2 years ago, was at Theater by the Sea performing Music Man. So
Wonderful.
It's been a big part of my life.
Wonderful. Now I think Hugh Jackman is doing...
Going to do the new one. If you want to get tickets, you better have a lot of money and
you
get
have
them now.
tickets.
I do have tickets. I do have tickets. But it opens in September, and first seats that I could get, good seats that I could get, was in December. So
wow.
It's going to be interesting.
I wonder if maybe we'll be lucky enough at PPAC, because a lot of when they do the national tours, they originate out of Rhode Island.
Right.
And so maybe we'll get an opportunity to see.
That's where I started in 1993, the PPAC with Music Man before we went on our national tour. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Let's talk about your work at the radio station.
Sure.
So it's been, what, 17 years
Going
you've
on
been there?
17 years, yeah. It's actually, the radio station is kind of a spin-off of the singing.
This is WCRI,
classical station.
95.9 FM classical station.
Our broadcast tower is on Block Island, so our direct signal is mostly in southern Rhode Island, southeastern Connecticut, southeastern Massachusetts, and even on Long Island, Montauk, and so forth. But we have a large streaming audience. People listen to us all over the world, and it's great to get emails from Taiwan and from Mexico. And so with the absence of some of the classical music stations, there used to be a lot of them, and as they have declined over the years, we've found that our audience is increasing dramatically through the streaming. People will tell me they just put it on their computer, leave it in the background, and that's their listening, and they enjoy it that way.
So what are the shows you have? Tell me.
Well, Conducting Conversations is the main program that I was
That's the one
involved.
that we've been on, like George Marshall and myself.
Right.
We talk about, usually, I know we're usually on together once a year talking about the scores that have been nominated, and then he's gone on.
Right.
And we always have a lot of fun with that.
It's a great format. It's similar to this, only we have music that we normally play. It's a show on the arts, and I've had everything, and I tell people, Rhode Islanders appreciate this. I say I've had everyone from Charlie Hall to Keith Lockhart. So everything in the middle that you can think of in the arts. People like Ed Marquardt from the Rhode Island Civic Chorale and Bill Haney from Theater by the Sea, and the list there's actually been over 1,000 people on the shows over all these years. So it's quite an enjoyment for me, because it is always different. I get to meet a lot of people that I never would have met before. And this was a spin-off 17 years ago. I was working for Comcast doing voiceover work. And WCRI came into being as a spinoff from WCRB out of Boston.
Yep.
And when the ownership bought WCRI, they brought me in as a local guy, and just to have some local interest and develop some local shows. And so we started with conducting conversations. There was a spin-off of that with the Newport Music Festival many years ago. And then we're still doing that now. Pamela Pantos, the executive director of the Newport Music Festival, and I do a show every week. Yep. And then we have American A Cappella, which is myself and co-host Jamie Jones, and we just do a cappella music, obviously, on that show.
Yep.
Joe Perillo, the jazz musician, jazz pianist, very involved in the Rhode Island music scene. He was a frequent guest, and I said to him one time, "You should have a show for jazz." So we've developed that. That airs on Friday night.
Right.
And I do the newest one is called Company Break, where I have a chance to talk to clients that support the classical music station by advertising.
Yep.
And they come in and they may not have any involvement in music, but I'll have clients come on, whether they own a pharmacy in Westerly,
yep,
or whatever business they might be in.
So you'll be talking about having a business conversation, then will you incorporate music as part of that, or no?
Different shows. So Company Break is strictly about
business.
That particular business, whether they're a doctor or a lawyer or an Indian chief.
Right.
We just talk about their business.
Okay, so what about conducting conversations? Let's say you have a guest like a Charlie Hall, a comedian.
Yeah.
So you'll talk about comedy, and then will you bring music into that?
Yeah, somebody like he was one of the very earliest people I ever had on the show. Haven't had him back. I don't like him. No, but he was, when we came on with Charlie, we play music that he had written, some songs that he had done and stuff like that. If it's Theater by the Sea, Bill Haney will always come in and bring the star of whatever, of Mamma Mia or of the Rat Pack or whatever is going on at the theater at that time, and we'll do a show. We'll talk for 4 or 5 minutes.
Maybe some musical highlights. Mm-hmm. And I know, because I love listening to, your show comes on Sunday nights.
Right, Sunday night.
So sometimes you can just be, whatever you're prepping for Monday, you put it on in the background, you're listening to music, you're listening to the conversations. It's very relaxing and enjoyable, and can sometimes make your chores that you have to do a lot more fun.
It's a fun program because obviously everybody's in a good mood when they're there. They're talking about something they know very well, something they enjoy doing, and so it always works well.
And you've had a variety. You had like Conan O'Brien on?
Well, the Conan O'Brien story was actually when I was in California doing a webcast in a studio similar to this one.
Yep.
And I had the earpiece, as you know, in the ear, and I had the producer say to me, "I've got Conan O'Brien, do you want him?" And I said, yeah, I wanted to turn and say, "No, I don't want Conan O'Brien."
Right.
But so I finished the interview I was doing, and Conan came in and sat down, and he was there to do a spot about the barbershop quartets and how old and awkward and funny they were.
Right.
And he came in and he sat down and in the chair, and he kind of was not happy looking. And my opening comment was, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have Conan O'Brien." Mm-hmm. And Conan's sitting there kind of looking bad. And I said, "Conan, you don't look happy to be here." And he said, "I'm not." So then, as to find out what was going on, he didn't realize that barbershop quartets were not necessarily guys with straw hats and striped vests.
Right.
And the first group he met when he came in the building were the world champions, who were all 20-something years old, and they were phenomenal singers.
And they beat him up.
Right. And Conan O'Brien looks at me and says, "Well, that's not funny."
Oh.
So what am I going to do for my show?
Right.
So that was the Conan O'Brien story, where we eventually got to the fact where barbershop quartets are not what you think they might be.
Right.
There's a lot of different styles.
Who are some of the musical talents that you've had that you have just said to yourself, "I can't believe I'm interviewing this person"?
Well, Dick Van Dyke, definitely. Also during one of those webcasts.
How was that?
He was phenomenal. He was just absolutely phenomenal. I interviewed him when he was 83 years old. And it was.
I think he's 90-something now.
He was he was like he was 25. I mean, the energy and the excitement and the look on his face when he wanted to talk about whatever project he was working on.
This is a guy that you would appreciate because here he had done like Bye Bye Birdie
Yeah,
on Broadway way back when.
sure.
And segued into everything from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Mary Poppins and
Right.
the Dick
And
Van
then
Dyke Show.
television, right?
Right.
Yeah, he talks about, you know, that he hadn't done very many movies. He wasn't a movie guy, he was a TV guy.
Right.
And during one of the commercial breaks, one of the producers came up to me and said, he's only been in 30 movies. You know?
Right.
You know?
He was also a huge fan of Stan Laurel and had the opportunity to meet Stan Laurel. And Stan Laurel, whenever he would sign an autograph, he would say, "God bless."
Right.
And so Dick Van Dyke then decided, when I sign an autograph, I'm going to write "God bless."
There you go.
But he, phenomenal.
Yeah, he's just a great
tour de force.
a great talent. You know, it's one of those things where you meet somebody like that and you say, exactly, I can't believe I'm here. You know?
Yeah.
I feel that way now with you.
Yeah, right. I'm the Dick Van Dyke of Rhode Island.
There you go. There you go.
But what about
Katie Huffman is a Tony Award winner. She's been on my show a couple times and had opportunity. She won her Tony for the Blonde Bombshell and the Producers with Nathan Lane.
Right.
Yeah, and people like that. Sonny Hackett, Buddy Hackett's son, appeared at Theater by the Sea a couple times, and he's been in. And
what about? Didn't you also some of the conductors? I know you mentioned Keith Lockhart. Is there anyone else that you interviewed?
Well, you know, we do things with, of course, the local people, Larry Ratcliffe and Ed Marquardt, and a lot of the conductors there, Christine Noel from the Providence Singers, and George Kent when he was with the Chorus of Westerly, all the people that are involved from the large groups like the Chorus of Westerly, one of the largest community choruses in the United States, to the Jamestown Community Singers and B.J. Whitehouse and people like that. That you know, it's great to meet these people. They're so passionate about what they do in their community, and whether it's professional, Rhode Island Philharmonic, or if it's the local, you know, chamber orchestra, it's always fun.
They all have that same common core, right? That they are passionate, they love what they do, and you are a great audience to tap into how they think and work, and because you care, you love the arts.
Absolutely. You know, people say to me all the time, you know, do you like your job? I said, I have the best job in the world. I really do. I have the opportunity to meet these people, to pick their brain, to learn from them, and to just be increasing my ability to perform when I have that option.
Let me ask you a question. When you're, and again, you're a performer. You've also organized, and you've also interviewed other folks who have been conductors.
Right.
What do the conductors bring to a musical piece? Like, is there something that they, like a particular, like if Arthur Fiedler's to do something as a conductor, or John Williams, or Keith Lockhart, do they bring something different?
Absolutely. I believe they bring their own personality and their own passion. Anyone that sings a song, you can listen to Frank Sinatra, you can listen to Tony Bennett, you can listen to Billy Joel. It doesn't make any difference. They may sing the same exact song, but it's not going to be the same way.
Right.
Same thing is true with conductors. They're going to conduct that piece of music in their own style and their own flair. The notes are obviously familiar, and the melody is familiar, but there's a style. There's something that they bring to it. There is that I always wanted to do this, you know, I always wanted to do that.
I saw at the Boston Symphony the live, they showed Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Keith Lockhart was doing with the orchestra. And I had taken my nephew and I said, wait till they get to that truck sequence, because the truck sequence has got 12 minutes of music that's on, and I'll never forget him doing it, and when he was done, you could tell he had just gone through the gauntlet.
Right, he was exhausted, right?
Right. But I was just wondering if they add that, you know, whether it's like Stars and Stripes, is Arthur Fiedler going to do something a little different than John Williams or Keith Lockhart? Is there something you think that they...
I certainly don't consider myself an expert by any means in that field, but I do think that they bring, in talking to them, they always bring something different.
Right.
They always have that little something that just changes it. And that's true for a lot of the performers that I interview, whether they be conductors or singers or people I've had the opportunity to do shows with. And in the green room before this, we were talking about the Kingston Trio, and
Right.
I brought them up a couple of years ago and did a show at the Ocean State Theater at the time. And great guys, had a wonderful time. Before that, the Smothers Brothers, I brought them
Oh, I
into,
love the Smothers
brought them
Brothers.
into P-PAC, and we did a show with them, and they were just in awe of this world of singing they didn't know anything about, because it was the Narragansett Bay Chorus and the Smothers Brothers.
Wow.
And there's a chorus called Coastline Show Chorus, which is a female version that my wife happens to direct. And they were on the program too. And Tommy Smothers looks at me and he says, "They're unbelievable.
Whoa.
They're great. Can you introduce me to that director?" I said, "I got an in for you." But you know, there's all kinds of stories.
Now,
like
you've
that.
also traveled the world doing your singing, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've had the opportunity to be on pretty much every major performance venue in the United States and Canada. I don't do much overseas. Been to London and performed there, but everything in the United States, from the LDS Center in Salt Lake City, which is a theater that seats 21,000 people. A theater. It's unbelievable. It's the largest in the world, to many times at Carnegie Hall, to the Grand Ole Opry, to my favorite place.
I was going to ask you.
You ready? Mechanics Hall in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Why?
From California, from Newfoundland to Seattle, Mechanics Hall in Worcester
Why?
is my favorite. It's the sound, it's the presence of when we're able to be on that stage and the resonance that you feel. It's just amazing. It's like singing in your own living room, but there's, you know, could be a couple thousand people in the audience listening.
And it's the sound.
Yeah, it's just
The
that
purity of the sound.
the acoustics, and it's just one of these things. You know, people say, "Well, Carnegie Hall must have been the best," and I said, "Well, it's nice, but you know, it's just for some reason could be."
Okay, well, what was it like? Tell me about your first experience at Carnegie Hall.
Well, it was pretty amazing. The show was sold out.
When was this?
Probably working on close to 20 years ago, and the show was sold out. I happened to be able to do 5 years in a row of this.
And what was the show? Tell
The
us.
show was called the Big Apple Chorus, which is the barbershop chorus from Manhattan
Yep.
that was sponsoring the show, and they asked me to come in as the MC. And I can remember being backstage, and at Carnegie Hall there's no curtain. So when you enter, if people that are familiar with seeing it on television or being there in person, there's a door in the back. The door opens and the main person walks out. So I was backstage at 1 minute of 8 getting ready to go out, and in my tuxedo, and there's a woman that stands at that door, and her job is to open the door for the star. In the meantime, while she's waiting, she might be dusting him off or fixing his hair or straightening his tie or whatever. And I got in a conversation with her. I said, "How long have you been doing this?" She said, "Over 30 years. Can you imagine the people she saw and touched as I walked out on that stage, and realized that there was Judy Garland, there was Frank Sinatra, there was Pavarotti, there was anybody you could think of that had ever been in the music industry."
Live at Carnegie Hall.
And same feeling last year at the Grand Ole Opry. The new Grand Ole Opry, which is now not in downtown Nashville. The Ryman Auditorium was the original.
Yep.
And what they did at the new Grand Ole Opry, they took a piece of the stage that's about the same size as this table. They took a piece of the original stage and embedded it in the new Grand Ole Opry. So when we walked out to perform as a quartet, we were standing on the same piece of wood that Johnny Cash was on, and Dolly Parton, and all of those, you know. So
Minnie Pearl.
Minnie Pearl, all those things. So a lot of great opportunities. I've been very fortunate to.
What was it like singing at the Grand Ole Opry?
Bottom line, other than knowing that you were there, probably not different than pretty much everywhere else.
Right.
But the feeling and that
history,
the accomplishment, and the feeling of history, and being humbled by the people that have been there, and you have that opportunity to be on that same stage, is very humbling.
When you're singing, let's say, like how long are your performances?
Well, that'll vary. That'll vary. A normal concert that my quartet is hired to be on might be in the average of 25 minutes to a half an hour, where we're appearing with several other groups.
Yeah.
Occasionally, we'll do a performance, or somebody will say, we want you to be our entertainment for the night, and so you're on for an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
You know.
Now, do you guys, it's a quartet, so it's the same four all the time?
My quartet's name is Mansion Vocal Band.
Mansion Vocal
And
Band.
you can probably figure out personally where that comes from, the fact that I live at the Music Mansion in Providence.
Yep.
And so we were sitting around one day a couple of years ago and said we should try putting something together. They were men I'd known pretty much for many, many years,
Yeah.
and singers, and they were all melody singers, what we call lead in a barbershop quartet. And I said, we should put something together. And they looked at me kind of funny and said, well, we all sing the same part. And I said, well, figure it out. I want to be with you. And they did. So we have been singing for a couple of years now and had some great experiences. And Al lives, our lead singer lives in Nashua. Bob O'Connell, our baritone, lives in Pawtucket. And Jerry Xavier, who's a member of the Rhode Music Hall of Fame, lives in Seacock.
And how often do you practice?
Not as often as we should. We try to do once a week.
Okay.
Try to do once a week, but we do a lot of shows, so that takes place.
How many shows do you do a year, would you say?
Oh, wow. Maybe 45, 50 times appearing at different places, because sometimes you'll have several things in one weekend where, you know, there's a matinee and an evening, or you'll be in one place one night and someplace the next Saturday. You know, it's pretty much on weekends.
You're having fun. You're living the dream.
I live in the dream.
You're doing what you love.
Yeah.
And that also includes doing your radio show. And I just want to thank you for all you do to contribute to the arts, support the arts, support other artists who have their dreams, and you're a Hall of Famer, my friend.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so very,
Pleasure
very
to be
much.
here. Thank
You're
you.
wonderful. Mike Maino, everyone.
Thank you.